Okay. Good morning. Good morning. We've got some people trickling in early. I think we're going to have a big flood of people joining over the next minute. Hello, hello. Good morning. Okay, here everyone comes. How are you doing this morning? Feel free to write in the chat how you're doing. Good morning, Tony. I think you can message everyone. Yes, okay, great. I believe, so I think a lot of you are in Detroit, is that right? We've got a lot of friends from Detroit, Phoenix, DC, Austin. Oh, we've got oh, wow. Oh, good, we're all over the place. You know, we just did, I just worked with the Bureau of Land Management, and that was a similar thing where we had people from all over the country, ranging from Alaska to Arizona to, oh, North Carolina, that's where I live. I'm currently in Arizona, but I actually live in right outside of Chapel Hill. That I'm a PhD student there, in addition to teaching with Mindfulness First. Okay, so we've got a lot more people just sort of trickling in. Oh my gosh, Chapel Hill here as well. Wow, yeah, I go to UNC. I'm wearing my Mindfulness First shirt. Otherwise, I would probably be wearing my Tar Heels sweatshirt. So cool. That's awesome. Oh, cannot hear. Can everyone else hear me? Is anyone else having an issue? You can hear, okay. Okay, Mortiza, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. I think that might be, maybe it could be a headphone issue or an audio issue. Okay, it's 8:01. We've got 76 people, and I think a few more RSVP'd, so we might have some people trickling in. But let's go ahead and get started because we only have an hour and we're going to have a lot of fun today. So, hello, I'm Logan. That's a picture of me. And we are Mindfulness First. So we are an Arizona-based nonprofit, and we support the mental health well-being of folks in schools, businesses, and communities across America. And so we teach trauma-sensitive mindfulness to help build more emotionally intelligent, caring, and resilient people. And one thing that is great about Mindfulness First is that most of our work happens in schools. And I'm sure you are all aware that kids are really having a mental health crisis right now. And so it's really wonderful that this work that we do with businesses helps to fund our work in schools. And we also, I'm not going to read this whole thing. You will get access to these slides afterwards, just so you know. So you don't have to worry about taking notes or anything like that. But we do like to acknowledge that mindfulness-based practices have existed around the world for centuries, and especially outside of America. So especially in various Asian cultures and indigenous communities. And we only offer programs that are informed by contemporary research in neuroscience and psychology. And so we want to hold both of those things, that we did not create the practices that you're about to do, and all of these practices have been vetted through a lot of research in neuroscience and psychology. Okay, so just to go ahead and get started, we like to start with what we call a mindful moment. So we just take a couple minutes to get in touch with our bodies and our feelings and the present moment and see how we're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and invite you to maybe take a big breath in and bring your arms up overhead if that feels good. And as you breathe out, you might let the arms come down in front of you, down to your side, whatever feels right. There's no wrong way to do this. And on the next inhale, you might bring the arms back up again. And as you breathe out, you might let them come down. So I invite you to find a nice posture that you feel alert but relaxed. So not too rigid, but not too slouched over. So you might even roll your shoulders up and back a couple of times. I find this is really helpful. And I'm going to invite you to just tune into how your body's doing right now. If you notice any sensations, if you notice any hunger, any anxiety, any happiness, any neutral sensations. If you don't feel anything, that's totally fine. Just noticing, is there a part of your body that's calling for attention? And just taking time to notice how we're doing without any judgment. If we're not doing too great, no problem. If we're doing really great, no problem. And we'll just take a couple moments just noticing. And if you'd like to, you can go ahead and blink open your eyes if they're closed. They don't have to be closed. If you want to keep them open, that's great too. And I hope you feel a little bit tuned into your body, and we can go ahead and get started. Okay. So today, when we teach like our full mindfulness series, we do a lot more talking and lessons and theory. But since this is a mindful party, we want to really put the emphasis on the practicing, and there's time to reflect and time to share with each other and ask questions. And so this is a lot more interactive than like a normal mindfulness lesson would be. So we are going to do what I'm going to give you a 10-minute mindfulness lesson. I'm going to try to stuff the most important things I can about mindfulness in 10 minutes. I know some of you are already very familiar, but I think it's really beneficial to just sort of recap and to see what Mindfulness First is thinking about mindfulness. And then we're going to have 3 different exercises. We're going to try some mindfulness meditation. We're going to try some mindful walking or movement. And then we're going to do some compassion meditation. And these are all based off of sort of the feedback that we got from General Motors about what might be some helpful, what might help cultivate some of the qualities and reflect the values that you're looking to embody in your work. So let's go ahead and get started. And just so you know, there will be time to ask questions at the end of each lesson or exercise, and there will be a little Q&A at the end, depending on how long the Q&As take in between. So just to begin, I did mention that we do what's called trauma-sensitive mindfulness. So I don't have time to go into all the details of what exactly that means. But basically, what it means is that for some people, there are certain mindfulness exercises or putting attention on certain parts of your body, depending on your past experiences, that might start to activate your nervous system. You might start to feel really overwhelmed. You might start to feel numb or disconnected. So we use this idea called the resilient zone. So the goal is for you to stay within your resilient zone. And sometimes this is called your window of tolerance. And so if at any time when we're doing a practice, or you hear something, or you hear an invitation, and you start to get a little overwhelmed, or you start to feel like you're not as connected to your body, that's a sign that you might need to make some kind of adjustment. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. And so because of that, all the exercises and all of the invitations that I'll give today are optional. And we feel very strongly at Mindfulness First that anytime we offer mindfulness, whether it's to students or kids, that everything is optional, that no one ever feels forced or pressured or guilted into practicing mindfulness. And so think of every single cue I say. If I say, think of a person who makes you really happy, or think of, put your attention on your breath. Anything I say is an invitation that you are totally free to reject, and you can still get a ton of benefits by finding some alternative. And trust your own body. So again, feel free to keep your eyes open, feel free to add in movement, and feel free to take breaks, look away from the screen, whatever you need to do. Okay, so a good way to start would be by asking, what is mindfulness, right? It is such a hot topic these days. And a lot of the research that I do is about mindfulness and how we conceive of mindfulness and sort of all of the different complicated things that arise when we've had thousands of years of people practicing mindfulness and trying to put it into a package that works for companies and for schools and for businesses. So there are so many different ways we can think of mindfulness. And I'm just going to give you what I like to call a practical definition, meaning this is going to be what's most helpful for actually cultivating mindfulness versus trying to be a really theoretically precise definition, right? So we can think of mindfulness as both a state of mind and a trait. So there's these two different ways we can think of mindfulness. So when we think of, I like to call the state of mind mindful awareness to sort of differentiate it, just to get a little bit more clarity. So mindful awareness is a state of mind that involves actively noticing what's happening inside and outside of your body right now, often with an attitude of kindness and curiosity. And mindfulness can also be thought of as a trait or like a personality trait, like a disposition to be self-aware that involves your attention regulation, so your ability to direct your attention towards a particular object. And it also involves your capacity, unsurprisingly, to cultivate mindful awareness. So can you tune into your body and notice how you're feeling, notice the sensations? Do you have bodily awareness, self-awareness of your thoughts and feelings? That's how you can think of mindfulness as a trait. And of course, we can have moments when we feel really mindful and moments when we feel really, really unmindful. And there are some people who can be particularly mindful when they go throughout their day, and other people it can be more difficult for. And again, a lot of this has to do with genetics. A lot of it has to do with how our attention centers work in our brain. So the good news is we can cultivate mindfulness and we can become more mindful through practice. So another way of thinking about mindfulness is, I like to call it the self-regulation of our attention. So we are choosing to direct our attention typically towards our present moment experience. And this includes the observation of various phenomena. So I use the term observation here in contrast to, I really identifying with a thought or a feeling, really trying to just push the feeling away, resisting the feeling, or being carried away by the feeling, what I often call going down the rabbit hole. When you're going down the rabbit hole, you're typically not being mindful until you catch yourself and you go, I see I'm going down the rabbit hole. That's the moment of mindfulness. So mindfulness allows us to distinguish between what psychologists call the observing and the experiencing self. So this is sometimes called decentering or dual awareness. So you can observe that your experience of going down the rabbit hole. And that observation is that mindful awareness. Okay. So there are various ways of being mindful. You can be mindful of thoughts, of feelings, sensory data, physical sensations, desires. You can be mindful of your movement, of any bodily action. You can piece together thought patterns, emotional patterns. You can be mindful of your surroundings when you go for a walk in the woods or when you are eating food or all sorts of things. And you might contrast mindfulness with mindlessness. So you might think, if you're just sort of letting the mind wander endlessly, you're only acting really impulsively, you're just reacting to everything without giving it any thought, constantly going down the rabbit hole for hours and hours, whether it's on YouTube or social media or in your own head. All of those things, you might think mindfulness is not that, right? Mindfulness is taking our attention and directing it in particular ways that are more intentional typically. So what is mindfulness not? So mindfulness is not completely quieting the mind. Because like I said, you can be mindful that you're going down the rabbit hole. You can be mindful of a busy brain. I like to think of attention like a magnet. So sometimes there are particular thoughts or experiences, especially if we have a negative conversation or we're really anxious about something, that is like our attention is going to get drawn to that thought again and again. And so mindfulness is just about noticing my attention is over here. And then you kind of pull it back to the present moment. And even if it goes right back to that thought, if you just keep pulling it back and again and again and again, that's mindfulness. So you may never have a quiet mind during a particular mindfulness practice. And it doesn't mean you're not being mindful. Okay, mindfulness is also not calming down completely, because again, you can be mindful actively while you're feeling anger, sadness, or excitement. Mindfulness is not just sitting still with your eyes closed, so you can practice mindfulness in a ton of different ways. Mindfulness is not controlling your thoughts and feelings, so mindfulness helps you regulate thoughts and feelings when they arise, so it can help you avoid going down the rabbit hole. But that initial thought, a lot of thoughts arise completely outside of our conscious control, unfortunately, because I'm sure you've all experienced the thought where you're like, wow, I wish that thought didn't pop into my head. But that's just sort of how brains work, right? And mindfulness this is my favorite one. Mindfulness is not something you are just not good at. So mindfulness can be really tricky to cultivate in the moment, but everyone can find a way and find a practice that works for them. I feel very strongly about that. So I don't have time to go a ton into the brain, but I am someone who's very like science-minded, empirical-minded. And so for any skeptics out there, for anyone who knows a skeptic and they think mindfulness is somehow kind of like woo-woo or not scientifically based, I just want to show you this little brain chart that your amygdala is that little almond-shaped part of your brain that's responsible for your stress response, for releasing adrenaline and cortisol anytime you get anxious or worried or angry. And when we practice mindfulness, we actually activate this other part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex. Now, the prefrontal cortex is responsible for letting the amygdala know that it can calm down. So basically what happens is there's also evidence that people that practice mindfulness for a long time, particularly like traditional meditation, that's what gets studied a lot in psychology research and neuroscience, they have more connections between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, so that they're able to better communicate and send messages to the amygdala to say, okay, I'm fine. It's just a meeting. It's just a deadline. I can get through this, or it's just a conversation. And it can actually help. That's how mindfulness can help to reduce stress and to help bring our attention back to the present moment and sort of interact with life in a more wholesome, positive, happy, joyful, peaceful, whatever word you want to use way. So I'm just going to read this really quickly. So mindfulness, the way mindfulness works is that when we are able to respond without engaging our snap judgments, when we're able to take a moment to pause, this leads to better decision making. So when we're able to pay attention in the present moment and give ourselves the time and space needed to see clearly and respond skillfully, that's going to help us, as opposed to reacting impulsively or based on sort of distorted perceptions, because sometimes our anger or our anxiety can actually, we can think of it as like glasses that get fogged, that get fogged up. And being able to take a moment to return to mindful awareness allows the fog to clear, and we can sort of access a more objective evaluation of the situation. So we have attention. If you look at the little chart, we can take some time to notice. The pause gives us some clear space to actually process and respond and make a choice versus reacting impulsively. Okay, we're at 11 minutes. So just so you know, it's more like mindfulness in 12 minutes, but I hope that's okay. So some of the personal benefits of mindfulness, a lot of them are related to what's called self-regulation. And so these are things that you've probably heard me talking about already, that when we practice mindfulness, we improve our attention regulation, which is really important for emotional regulation, for productivity, for all kinds of things that we like to have happen in our life. Increased bodily awareness is very helpful for monitoring your emotions and your nervous system and being able to take care of your body. Emotional regulation, I think, of course, that should make sense of why that would be a benefit. Improved agency and decision-making for the reasons I just said before, and that objectivity, that mental clarity, by allowing ourselves to sort of unfog or, wipe off the grime of all of whatever might be clouding our judgment in the moment. And of course, there's decreased stress, anxiety, cortisol, all those things. And there are also social benefits to mindfulness. So including increased critical thinking, so problem solving and collaborations, relevant skills, increased empathy and compassion, increased listening and communication skills, and then decreased aggression and impulsive speech and impulsive behavior. So this last slide has a lot, and again, you will get all of this afterwards, so no need to feel like you have to absorb it all like a sponge, but I just like to go over a couple things really quickly. So the difference, we'll start up at the top left, the difference between mindfulness and mindfulness meditation, this is really important, that mindfulness meditation is one formal practice that we're about to try that helps cultivate mindfulness. But mindfulness itself, like I said, is that state of mind or that trait of actively noticing. And so you can cultivate mindful awareness doing a lot of other things too. So for some people, meditation just isn't their thing, or they want to start off with something else and then work their way to meditation, totally fine. Why practice mindfulness? So mindfulness is an active noticing. So it's like flexing a muscle, it's engaging, it's actively engaging your prefrontal cortex and particular parts of your brain associated with your attention. And so it requires practice to develop and sustain. And so that's why you would want to develop sort of a daily practice, because you can get benefits by practicing for 6 weeks and then stopping, but most of the long-term benefits can really come from if you find a way to integrate some mindfulness practices into your life, like maybe a few times a week or every day is great too. And I'm going to skip to this bottom middle panel because this is one of my favorite facts that I learned from a neuroscientist, Dr. Helen Wang in San Francisco. When we create new habits, our brain actually builds new neural pathways. We are literally building new pathways in our brain. We're not going over the old habits. And so whenever you get anxious or overwhelmed or your nervous system gets activated, your brain wants to conserve energy and it's going to go for whatever is most familiar to it. So if you've just started building these neural pathways for mindfulness, and you have a really strong habit of going down the rabbit hole, when you get anxious, your brain is going to say, let's go down the rabbit hole, because that's what I know, that's what I'm the most familiar with. So that leads me to this last panel on the bottom right, that it's really important that you find time to practice mindfulness before you get really anxious or stressed out, because it's going to be really hard to build up those neural pathways in your brain before, it's going to be really hard to do that while you are actively anxious or sad, because your brain is just going to be thinking about conserving energy at that time so that it can get through whatever is causing it stress, right? Before it can just return back to balance. And so it's really important you start to build up those habits when you're doing okay, when you're having a fine day, when you're feeling okay, versus only practicing mindfulness when you're like super anxious and like about to have a panic attack, because it's just not going to be as effective. But if you do practice mindfulness regularly when you're doing okay, then it's more helpful when you actually are really stressed out. And I can speak from personal experience with that. Okay, so before we go into our first exercise, I just want to, does anyone have any questions? You can type them in the chat. You can do a Q&A. You can ask a question with that. We'll have time for unmuting after our first exercise. So let's not raise our hands yet. But if anyone has any questions, feel free. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and get started with our first exercise. Okay. I think we're all good. Excellent. Okay, let's go ahead. Oh no, I have to move this screen. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with our first exercise, which is mindfulness meditation. So maybe some of you have practiced meditation before and you've gotten particular instructions. So I'm going to give you briefly talk about these two techniques that are the most commonly used when studying mindfulness in neuroscience and psychology research. So the two techniques are called focused attention and open monitoring. So typically we start with focused attention, and I'll guide you through this practice. So don't worry, you don't have to do it by yourself. So focused attention is more like a zoomed in attention. So typically we think of the breath, but if you have trouble following the breath, you might choose something else. Like you can open and close your hands. You can feel the feeling of your body making contact with the ground, your feet on the earth, your hands in your lap, sounds in the room. You can always light a candle. Think anything like that can be an anchor. And basically, you direct your attention towards the anchor. So, if you're breathing in, you might say, oh, I'm breathing in. I'm breathing out. You might say in and out mentally to help sort of keep track. You might focus on your nose. You might focus on your stomach, your chest, wherever you feel your breath. And then your mind's going to wander, probably pretty soon. Mine does. And as soon as you catch your mind wandering, you go, oh, my mind's wandering, and I bring it back to the breath. And that's it. It's simple, but if any of you have ever meditated before, it's not very easy to do because our mind loves to wander all over the place. So we usually start with that, and that's what we'll do today. And then after a while, you can try sort of zooming out into this open monitoring technique, and where you don't necessarily have a single anchor. Usually you might lightly focus on your breath or something like that, but you kind of zoom out to get awareness of your entire present moment experience. And so you sort of you allow all the sensations, the sounds, the thoughts, the feelings, you try to just let them go by like they're clouds in the sky. And you're just trying to let them all go. You're trying not to grab onto them. You're trying not to push them away. It sounds kind of weird until you've actually experienced it. So if this doesn't make sense, or this just seems like, I don't know what this is, you might try it when we practice, but if it doesn't work, it's just as good to stay with the focused attention, to just stay with the breathing the whole time. So, but either way, whenever we notice our mind wandering, or we see ourselves, we start going down the rabbit hole, or we start thinking, what am I going to have for dinner today? And then all of a sudden we've planned out a 5-course meal, we might notice, oh, okay, I'm not in the present moment, and we return back without judging ourselves. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and invite you to find what we sometimes call our mindful body. So what I mentioned earlier, where we're sitting upright, but relaxed, not too rigid. You might think of a string pulling the top of your head upward a little bit. So you might even tuck the chin ever so slightly. I like to roll my shoulders up and back just once or twice to feel broad in the chest and in the shoulders. And you're welcome to keep the eyes open if you'd like to, or you can close them. I'd recommend, if you keep them open, to lower the gaze to maybe about 45 degrees in front of you. You might turn away from the screen, or you can look at the picture of the bridge. And let's start with just bringing our attention to the breath. Whatever that means for you, it might be focusing on the belly. You might really notice the sensation of the breath coming in and out through the nose. You might feel it in the chest, in the back of the throat. You might even notice it in all of these different areas as it moves in and out of your body. And as your mind inevitably wanders, all we have to do is maybe we can mentally note, oh, my mind is wandering, you might just say, oh, I'm going to return to the breath, or whatever anchor works for you right now. And let's just stay with the breath for a few minutes, and then I'll come back in and we'll zoom out a little bit. And if you'd like to, you're welcome to stay here, continuing to keep our attention more zoomed in. And if you'd like to try maybe zooming out a little bit and expanding the awareness to really anything in the present moment, any sound that you're hearing, any sensation. You might even try very gently lifting the sides of the mouth into a very, very subtle smile. And you might feel what it feels like for the muscles and the myofascial tissue in the cheeks to stretch. You might notice if there's any tension that creeps in the shoulders or the jaw. And we just keep zooming out to just notice, allow all of these things to come and go, just like clouds in the sky. And if you find that there's one particular thought or feeling or sensation that really has a strong charge, maybe you might zoom back into the breath, return back to that anchor. To help you stay fully situated in the present moment. Just stay here for a few more moments. And when you're ready, you might slowly squeeze your thighs or flutter the eyes open or start slowly moving side to side or whatever might help you transition back into sort of the world around you, right? You might do a little stretch. I like to do a little twist, or you might stretch your arms up overhead. You might do a sigh, whatever feels good as you're getting out of this. So You just meditated. Maybe this was your first time meditating. Maybe you've done it for years and this was another time. But now, regardless of where you're at and how it was for you, we've got some time for reflections. So if you'd like to speak, we have about 3 minutes reserved. And if we don't take all 3, that's great. We can have more time at the end, but you are welcome to share in the chat, or like I said, raise your hand. You can ask any questions, but I'm really curious to know, how was this for you? How do you feel right now? How do you feel now compared to before when you started? If you feel the same, if you felt confused, that's totally fine. There's no wrong answer. You might say, what was easy or difficult about the practice? Was there something you found more difficult than others? And did anything unexpected occur? So we've got, like I said, yeah, we've got about 3 minutes where feel free to share it in the chat. You can also, if you ever want to give feedback anonymously, I believe you can ask a question anonymously through the Q&A function. And like I said, if you want to come off mute and say something, you're welcome to raise your hand. And I'll just sort of be sharing our reflections as we go along. So we've got feeling relaxed. We've got a second relaxed, mental refresh. I find that I do a lot of little mini, like what we just did, 5-minute meditations. I do that a lot throughout the day, particularly in the afternoon. And I find that it can be really, really refreshing, because if we do something like take a nap, this part of our brain called our default mode network gets activated, that's responsible for mind wandering, and we process a bunch of information. So there are actually times when taking a nap, it's really good for our brain health-wise, but it's not necessarily the most refreshing thing always. So mindfulness is definitely a time to mentally refresh. Focusing on breath is hard. It makes it hard to breathe. I focused on hands and lap feeling. Worked well. Great. Thank you for mentioning that. Yes, sometimes it can be hard when you try to, we typically try to ask people to not try to change the breath, but sometimes just being aware of the breath can be really difficult. So we also sometimes recommend that people do this. We have practices called like the 3-4-5 breath, or box breathing, where you breathe in for 4 seconds. You watch a timer, you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 4 seconds, and then you breathe out for 4 seconds. So you might try that too, right at first, especially if you found that you weren't breathing as much as you might normally. So that's another option to try. But again, focusing hands on the lap, focusing on sounds, just as good. Feeling more present. I feel like a weight was lifted, not as much pressure for me. Great, I'm happy to hear that. Feel more aware and refreshed. So nice to be reminded of the benefits of mindfulness. Great, I'm so happy to hear that. Calm, enjoyed the session, centered, relaxed and refreshing, refocused and calm, very refreshing, relaxed. I put my heated shoulder pad on. Yeah, oh yeah, I love, that sounds really nice. First time trying this, having an anchor helps refocusing, but very relaxing. Yes, okay, great. I'm so happy to hear that. Relaxed and calm, but it was difficult to stop wondering. Yes, that is, they've done a lot of brain studies, and even for like people that have been practicing meditation for years, the mind still wanders, because it's how our minds have evolved, right? Is to be constantly looking for new things, for new novelty. And it helps us survive, right? Because if we just eat one meal and then feel satisfied for the rest of our lives, we'll die of starvation. So it makes sense. We're constantly looking for new things, but it make it a little difficult to be present in the present moment. Sleepy, yep, totally normal. I definitely keep my eyes open when I meditate early in the morning and late at night, because otherwise I start falling asleep. Peaceful, de-stressing, focusing on breathing helped a lot. It was hard not to fall asleep. Yes, been there. And like I said, the eyes open. Sometimes I'll light a candle or just anything that can help me. Because yeah, every once in a while I go like that. Felt like inner peace. This exercise, along with breathing with peppermint essential oil, opened me up. That sounds great. Yes, smells. That's another great tip. If you find yourself having difficulty, thought like you keep falling asleep or something, having some kind of smell that's really engaging with the senses. Oh, I love box breathing. I did this during the session. Great. Thank you, Kelly. And sitting too long makes my lower back pain. I didn't realize that till I sat straight and started to get focused. Right. The pain was just so severely received by my brain. Yes. So thanks for, and yeah, thanks for sharing that. And it might be that lying down or doing walking are going to be better for longer, anything that's longer than like a minute or two. And I know I have a lot of friends that practice that way. I also have a lot of friends that will find a comfortable like lower back cushion. And instead of sort of sitting upright, they'll just lean back into the chair. And I have some friends with lower back issues where that works. So great. I thank you so much for all the feedback. Next, we're going to move on to our next exercise, which is going to be mindful walking. Now, if walking is really difficult for you, or if you are a wheelchair user, for example, feel free to make any kind of accommodation that you'd like. You can also just do some kind of mindful movement in your chair. Like, all that matters is that you coordinate movement with your breath. So if you breathe in and you bring the arms up, and you breathe out, the arms come down. You breathe in, you do a twist. You breathe out, you breathe in. And really, you can do neck rolls, you can give yourself a massage, whatever works. But if mindful walking is available to you, this is one of my favorite practices to do. So, and one reason why I wanted to do it today is because when we're being mindful, we're able to focus on the process of a particular task. And so this is really good for when we're thinking about being mindful at work and being mindful of the process of our work being just focused on the outcome. Because so often we become so outcome oriented that we lose our present moment awareness. And it's kind of counterintuitive, but if doing laundry is really boring for you or something, sometimes putting your attention on the laundry and being mindful with it can actually make it less terrible. And it's this weird paradox. Sometimes it doesn't work, but I've noticed for me, sometimes it works by just focusing on the process and not just feeling impatient or waiting for the outcome, but just enjoying the sensations and the feeling in the body. And being focused on the process. So walking is something where we can practice being more process oriented by bringing our full attention to whatever we're doing, right? Because normally we might walk to a place, and so our walking is very outcome oriented, but we're going to try walking mindfully. So I don't know if we'll do a full 5 minutes, just because it can be like I'm in a dining room right now, and you're probably in your bedroom or your home office or your office at work, and so you probably don't have like a huge space for you to do walking. Totally fine, because we're going to walk really slowly anyways. But we're also only going to do it for a few minutes, just so you can start to get a feel for what it's like. So basically, what I like to tell people is that it's going to depend on where you are, how you want to set up your mindful walking. So I really do like to align the breathing with the steps. So if you're inside, I usually will do like either one step for an inhale and one step for an exhale, or I'll lift the foot on the inhale, like really slowly, and then I'll put the foot down on the exhale. If you're outside, you can usually go a little farther. But if you're inside and you sort of walk the way you would when you're outside, you might get dizzy, because you're gonna just sort of end up at the other end of the room really quickly, right? And again, if the aligning the breathing to the movement is tricky for you, or it gives you some anxiety, just think of walking really slowly, and just think of walking slowly and noticing. Here, I'll go ahead and stand up. You probably won't be able to really see, but yeah, you can't see my feet, but basically you want to notice, or maybe I can, no, I can't. That's not how computers work. You bring all your attention, let's say, at first to the feeling of the heel making contact with the earth. Then you might bring all your attention to the ball of the foot, and then all of the attention to the toes and the transferring of the weight, right? So it might feel a little strange at times, because you might even feel like you start wobbling, because we're so used to not even thinking about how we walk that when we start doing it really mindfully, it can feel very strange. It can feel almost like we're walking for the first time. So let's go ahead and try that. Like I said, if you've got another alternative that you want to try or that works best for you, that let's go ahead and you can do that. And if not, I'll go ahead and invite you to stand up, and you might pick, I'm just going to walk to the end of the dining room. It's probably about 8 feet in front of me. And so what we'll do, you can put your hands, if you in your pockets, you can put your hands, you can clasp them together, you can just put them down. Sometimes I put them behind my back, whatever works for you. I usually start by just taking a few breaths in and out and feeling the sensation of my weight into the ground. So really putting all my attention on my feet. You might even shift your weight from side to side. You might feel, what does my weight feel like when it's all in my right foot, all in my left foot? When I go, you might go forward and back. And if you use any kind of assistive device, if you use a cane, or if you've got chairs nearby that helps you sort of lean into that, that's great. That's great too. And when you're standing, sometimes you can really breathe into your low belly, which is really helpful for maximizing your airflow. So you might even think of, when you inhale, trying to like fill your belly up like a balloon. And then when you exhale, you start to deflate it a little bit. So that might be helpful. And now, whatever works for you, you might try experimenting with a couple different ways. I'm going to try on the inhale, I'm going to lift my right foot. And as I breathe out, I'm going to put all my attention on the heel, ball, toe, in that sort of three different parts of my foot. And then I'll repeat with the left foot as I breathe in, lifting the left foot, breathing out, heel, ball, toe. And if this is too slow for you, you can go a little faster there. Yeah, whatever works for you. And let's go ahead and do this for about 2 more minutes. Breathing in and breathing out. And even if you only take like 2 or 3 steps before you have to turn around and walk back, that's great. And one thing that's nice about mindful walking, as you're walking, you might also engage your attention to the room around you. You might notice, is there anything you haven't noticed before in whatever space you're in? Again, trying not to cling to anything, but just sort of noticing any internal or external phenomena that are around us right now. And if you're around other people and you feel a little silly, or if you chose not to do it because you didn't want to feel silly, just notice that there's no wrong answer. Definitely no need to beat yourself up. And you might slowly make your way back to your computer if you're not already there. Okay. And you might sit back down whenever that works for you, but no rush if you're kind of far away right now. So let's go ahead and move into our reflections. We only have maybe like a couple minutes for this one, but I'd love to hear in the chat. Did you notice anything new in your environment? What felt different about focusing on the process of walking? Did it feel kind of weird? Did you find it to be a new experience? Did you find it helpful to align your breathing with steps, or was that something that you wanted to do something else? There's no wrong answers. Okay, I did mindfulness walking this weekend in the snow crunching under my feet helped me synchronize with my breathing. I love that. Arizona and North Carolina both are not very snowy places. So I do not have the opportunity to feel the snow crunching under my feet very often. Feeling very self-aware. Great. Anyone else? Maybe one or two more reflections before we move into our third practice? If not, no worries, because time flies when you're having fun, right? I meditate daily, but have never tried mindfulness walking. A bit harder to focus, but we'll try again. Yeah, it can be. It's funny for some people, it's easier for them to focus because there's so much that they can direct their attention to. But for other people, it can feel a bit overstimulating, right? Because there's so much to be aware of that it's not as simple as like focusing on the breath. So I actually try to do both every day because they are very different experiences. It was a new experience for me to synchronize breathing in steps. Great. I do this on the beach. Oh yes, that sounds lovely. Okay, wonderful. Well, let's go ahead and move into our third exercise, which is compassion meditation. So this one I hope is also one that a lot of you will be new for. So compassion meditation has actually been studied neurologically, and has been shown to help alter people's neurological responses to suffering. So it can help create a more balanced and engaged response to suffering. And so I say that in contrast to something like feeling apathetic or feeling so empathetic. When someone is so empathetic that they feel like the exact same pain that someone else feels, it can actually be kind of paralyzing, right? Because if someone just got really injured and you feel that pain, it can actually hinder you from actually getting help, right? This compassion meditation has been shown to help people have a more engaged response to suffering, where they recognize the suffering and then they move to help make the situation better. And it's really deceptively simple. It seems like it's not the kind of thing that would change your brain. And so that's why I like to emphasize that it has been studied, because we're just going to mentally repeat phrases over and over again while doing our best to wish others well. And so we're going to go in 4 rounds. So we're going to start with either ourselves or someone we find it really easy to send well wishes to. So some people find, I usually start with myself, but some people find it really difficult to send happy thoughts to themselves. So if that's you, then save that for the second person. But if you'd like to start with yourself, do that. Then the second person is going to be either yourself or someone that's really easy to love. And again, I will guide you through this, so no need to remember this. The third person, we're going to do someone who doesn't elicit any strong feelings. So someone that's sort of neutral. So if someone you just saw at the grocery store, a coworker you don't really know, someone that's just sort of pretty neutral. And then we're going to go to someone who's a little bit more difficult to use. So again, we don't need to don't pick someone that's going to bring up like a ton of really, really strong emotions, because we only have like 5 to 6 minutes to do this. But you might pick up, I've picked a lot of public figures who frustrate me. A lot of public figures who frustrate me. Someone who cut you off in traffic. So, someone who at work who took the last muffin and you're kind of mad at them. Anyone like that is good. And then we're going to basically say the same phrases for them. So you can repeat phrases like, may you be filled with kindness, may you be safe and happy. I'm going to pick really easy phrases for now. I'm going to pick just like one word as we move through it for our first time, just to see how we like it. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and invite you to return to that mindful body or whatever position is going to be comfortable for you. If you have the option to lie down, you might even, and that would be more comfortable, and you think you could do it without falling asleep, you can try that. You could even try walking around while we do it. Whatever works for you. I think most people will find that sitting up straight in a relaxed but upright position will be the easiest for them. And maybe just taking 1 or 2 breaths, tuning into the body, getting settled in. And we'll begin with that first person, either yourself or someone who's really easy to love. Just when you think of them, they make you happy. It doesn't have to be a person. It can be your pet. It can be a fictional character. It can be whoever you want. And we're just going to repeat these phrases mentally. So just silently in our head. So the first will be, may you be safe. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. And we'll go ahead and move to that second person. So either yourself or, again, someone that is really easy to send loving thoughts to. And we'll start with, may you be safe. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. And now you might move to a more neutral figure. So someone you saw at the grocery store, but you don't really know. Someone, your male person, whoever neutral person you don't feel really strong positive feelings or negative feelings. And we'll wish them the same thoughts. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. And lastly, we'll move to someone who's maybe just a little bit difficult. And again, make sure to take as many breaks as you need. And we'll send them the same thoughts. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. And when you're ready, you might just take 1 or 2 more big breaths in and out and come back to the room. You can open your eyes. That can be a really challenging or interesting exercise for a lot of people. So we're almost running out of time. So I would love to, feel free to write your reflections in the chat. I have this one last slide, just sort of with some wrapping up reminders. And then, so feel free to put your reflections in the chat, or you can put them in after we review here. So mindfulness, just to review, mindfulness can be thought of as both a state of mind as well as a trait, and it involves our self-awareness and the sort of active noticing and observing our present moment experience. And there's so many benefits. I even included some that I didn't get to talk about earlier, where mindfulness can really help us move through transformation with honesty and ease by helping us notice, am I feeling stressed out right now? Am I really resisting this change? And it can help us to sort of make peace with wherever we're at with change and transformation. Mindfulness allows us to be more process oriented, which I think is so important. Cultivating mindfulness can allow us to be more present for ourselves and our loved ones. We can cultivate mindfulness in our communication. And this last one, I really like to emphasize that when we are really mindful, when we're listening, we can listen in order to understand someone versus just listening to respond to them. So with that, you're going to have your slide deck today, and there are some additional resources and some instructions for some other exercises on there. So you're going to get that available for the next 30 days. And I think if you signed up if you registered for the Zoom link or for the webinar, then you should get an email with this information. But if not, it's mindfulnessfirst.org/MP-GM, and then the password is just GM. So it has been 1 hour. So if you have to leave, I totally understand. But I just want to be available to anyone. If you want to, I'd love to hear more of your reflections on compassion meditation. If you've got any questions, feel free to stick around, and I'll just sort of be sharing them as you head out. But otherwise, it was so wonderful to share some mindfulness with you. And I really hope that you can find some of this to be helpful in your daily lives. And we do offer a whole, we just did 7 weeks with the Bureau of Land Management. We had all these different sessions on burnout and mindful leadership and mindful culture. And so if you're ever interested in maybe bringing those to your workplace, definitely let the relevant person know, because I'd love to come back. So as we go out, you love compassion meditation. I normally place my hand on my heart. That can be really helpful to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. There was a mention of dual awareness. How is dual awareness different from non-duality? That's a good question. So dual awareness is really more of a psychological idea, where non-duality is a little bit more like philosophical, like saying that, we are not separate from each other or something like that. Whereas dual awareness is really a particular kind of like psychological state where we are able to observe our experiences and we're able to sort of differentiate, but we sort of witness. If I'm really angry, I might witness the anger and recognize, there's a lot of anger in my body right now. But it's sort of a different feeling than when we're angry and we sort of have our anger goggles on and we're seeing the world through angry eyes. I hope that makes sense. And we've got thank you. Oh, thank you. A lot of thank yous. Thank you so much. A great hour that seemed like 5 minutes. I agree. It went by so quickly. Great session. Thank you. Do you prefer meditating to music sounds or silence? Totally depends on you. I like silence typically, but if I'm like on a plane or I've got people nearby, because I meditate on the bus a lot, and I always use music then because it's easier for me to focus. So there's really no right or wrong way. Some music you can actually sync your breathing up with, which can be really great. How can compassion be judgment-free when it occurs with someone we know? That is a great question. How can compassion be judgment-free? When we do compassion meditation, it's totally okay if it's, especially with the difficult person, if we don't really feel the compassion. So what we're really trying to do is activate the part of our brain that is sending well wishes and that wishes well for someone. And at first it can feel kind of forced, or it can feel like it's not really there, and that's totally fine. And eventually the kind of long-term goal is to be able to even wish someone who makes us really mad, even to wish that person who cut you off in traffic or something, to be able to wish that, oh, I hope that they're happy. And that can be really hard because we might be judging someone in 1 second and then sending compassion for them in the next second. And sometimes that's how it works. Okay, great. Let's see here. We have, okay. You're so welcome. All right. Let's see. I think I answered those questions. Awesome. Okay. Well, if that's everything, the people who are still on the call are probably very interested in mindfulness. So I also will draw your attention to this very, very last slide. This might seem a little long, but there's a lot of, this has got a lot of links to different studies, and some of them, especially these last two from Helen Wang, there are YouTube videos about how meditation impacts the brain. And Helen Wang's this amazing neuroscientist. And so if you're interested in looking at some of the actual neuroscience and psychology behind it, there's some really cool studies in here. And we've also got a ton of stuff about benefits of mindfulness at work and all kinds of things. So I love drawing people to this slide. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out via email, which I think is info@mindfulnessfirst.org. And thanks, Tony. And yes, thank you to Haifa, Sunny, and Susan for helping to organize all of this. This is wonderful. All right, I will go ahead and log off, and I hope to see you all again soon. Okay, have a wonderful day.